Those people believe Fort Knox is untouchable, the most secure place on American soil. Steel doors, armed guards, layers of concrete thicker than any prison on Earth. They say not even a shadow can slip through its walls.
But I know different, because I've been there. That night, the alarms, the soldiers running, the thunder in the distance, I wasn't supposed to see any of it.
But fate dragged me to those gates, and what I discovered inside wasn't the safety of $1 trillion in gold. It was something far more dangerous. The truth. And trusting when I say this, once you hear what I saw, you'll never look at America the same way again. Let me take you back to the 1930s. America was in ruins. The Great Depression had crushed everything. Banks collapsed, people lost homes, men stood in endless lines for bread. How the dollar was fragile. Trust was gone. And when trust dies, a nation dies. The government needed a symbol of strength, something that could hold the very heart of America. A symbol was gold. So they built Fort Knox. Not just a vault, but a fortress designed to guard the nation's soul. Walls so thick they could laugh at bombs, and doors so heavy they could crush tanks. Soldiers sworn to shoot before asking questions. By the early 1940s, the gold began to pour in. Convoys of trucks carrying bars stacked like bricks of eternity. Billions of dollars worth at the time moved under armed escort, vanishing into Kentucky soil. Who were told, this is your security. This is the daring key behind every dollar in your hand. My grandfather was there. He told me about the endless shipments at the sound of steel doors swallowing America's future. He said it felt like the ground itself was being fed with treasure, as if the earth beneath Fort Knox was turning into solid gold. And from that moment, the myth was born. America's strength, its power, its pride, all locked inside one vault. But I sometimes wonder, was it really protection? Or was it the perfect cover-up from the very beginning? Once the gold was locked away, America entered what many called the golden age of trust. If every dollar in circulation was backed by the promise that behind those field doors lay real treasure, $1 meant real gold, not paper, not empty words, and that promise gave America power no other nation could match. The world believed it. Foreign governments sent their gold to Fort Knox for safekeeping, and they trusted the United States more than they trusted themselves. To hold a dollar was to hold a piece of Fort Knox. That was the illusion, or maybe the reality. But I grew up hearing the same words again and again. Fort Knox is untouchable, unshakable, undeniable. And I believed it too. To every story of American greatness, is every claim of financial dominance, it all teamed back to those hidden bars of gold. For decades, no one questioned it. People lived, worked, and died, or believing their money was real because the vault was real. The gold was the beating heart of the dollar. Without it, the dollar was nothing but paper. And yet, in 1971, something happened that cracked the illusion. President Richard Nixon stood before the nation and announced the end of the gold standard. From that day forward, the dollar was no longer tied to Fort Knox. It floated freely, backed not by treasure, but by faith. So ask yourself, if the dollar no longer needed gold, why did Fort Knox remain sealed, silent, and untouchable? Why did the government guard it like the crown jewel of the nation? Was it protection or a performance? I grew up believing Fort Knox was untouchable. My grandfather's stories painted it as the vault of legends. But then, the whispers began. I remember being a teenager, sitting at the edge of our old wooden porch, listening to my grandfather after a long day. His voice would drop low. It's almost like he didn't want the night itself to hear him. He told me things he never said in public, rumors that the vault wasn't as full as the government claimed. But sometimes, entire sections looked empty, that shipments arrived with fanfare but left without record. He told me about politicians who demanded to see the gold. The less you know, the safer you are. He'd say, staring into the distance like the memories were still alive in front of him. At first, I laughed it off. Why would America lie? Why would the government risk everything by taking the nation's wealth? But the older I got, the more I saw those whispers spreading. Books, articles, even members of Congress started questioning the truth. And deep inside me, a question I never wanted to ask began to grow. If the vault was truly full, why not prove it? Why not open those doors and silence the doubt forever? My grandfather didn't live long enough to see how far those doubts would go. But he left me with a warning, as I'll never forget. Never trust a vault that no one is allowed to open. And from that day on, I couldn't look at Fort Knox the same way again. In 1974, something happened that should have silenced the rumors forever. For the first time in history, Fort Knox opened its doors to outsiders. A small group of reporters, politicians, and officials were invited inside. I wasn't there myself, but my father was. He worked as a low-level aide and back as then, young, ambitious, eager to prove himself. He told me the story years later, and I could see in his eyes that it haunted him. He said the group was herded through endless layers of security, armed guards, checkpoints, steel doors that looked like they could crush a man in half. Finally, the visitors were brought into a massive chamber, and yes, there it was, gold, stacks of shining bars neatly arranged, glimmering under the harsh lights. The officials smiled, the cameras clicked, and the government declared, "Here is your proof. America's treasure is safe." But my father leaned closer to me. shocked when he told me the truth. He said the group was only shown one room, one carefully staged display. No one was allowed deeper. No one was permitted to count up the tests to verify. He remembered whispers among the reporters, doubts in their eyes. Some said it felt like theater, a performance designed to reassure, not to reveal. When I asked him if he believed the gold was really there, he just shook his head. If the vault was truly full, he said, why did they show us so little? That day, instead of ending the rumors, the so-called inspection ignited them. And in my family, the doubt became permanent, he said. Because my father walked out of Fort Knox, more suspicious than he had ever been when he walked in. After my father's story, I couldn't let it go. The whispers turned into an obsession. I started digging into everything I could find, old newspaper clippings and forgotten interviews, government reports buried in archives. And that's when I stumbled into the world of theories. Some were ridiculous, others terrifyingly possible. One night, I remember sitting in my dorm room, stacks of papers around me, the glow of my desk lamp flickering like a secret code. My roommate thought I was losing my mind, but I couldn't stop. I read about claims that Fort Knox had been emptied long ago. It has been gold sold off in secret to foreign governments. Others said it was swapped out for fake bars, tungsten covered in gold plating. Guys, beautiful to the eye but worthless inside. The wildest theory? That Fort Knox had been repurposed entirely. Not a vault anymore, but a storage site for do guys something else. Weapons, documents, maybe even secrets the world wasn't ready to know. The more I read, the more one question echoed in my head. Why was the government so afraid of letting anyone look inside? My father's voice haunted me. If the vault was truly full, why did they show us so little? And suddenly, I realized the gold wasn't the story anymore. The secrecy was. That night, staring at the papers spread across my desk, I swore to myself, I would find the truth, no matter how deep the rabbit hole went. I thought I was chasing shadows, until history itself began to prove me right. Every time the US faced a financial crisis, the same question came back. Does the gold still exist? I remember the first time I saw the headlines. 1971, Nixon takes America off the gold standard. My professor in college called it a necessary step up. I couldn't shake the chill running down my spine. If Fort Knox was truly full, why abandon gold at all? Decades later, in 2008, during the crash, prompts for reassurance. Not once did they say, don't worry, the gold is safe. Instead, silence. And silence is louder than words. I started writing everything down in a leather notebook. Dates, events, whispers I found on forums late at night. Some said the gold had been sold secretly to bail out debts. Others swore shipments had been seen leaving under the cover of darkness. The pattern was too sharp to ignore, as every time America's economy cracked, Fort Knox should have been a safety net. But it wasn't. It was a ghost. Mentioned, but never seen. And in that silence, my suspicion became belief. My father's doubt had become mine. The gold wasn't there. Or worse, it was never there to begin with. The deeper I went, the darker it became. It stopped being about gold. One night, scrolling through old online archives, but I found a thread that chilled me to the bone. A former military contractor claimed Fort Knox wasn't a vault at all anymore. It's a bunker, not a treasury. The gold is gone. What they're hiding now? You wouldn't believe. At first, I laughed it off. But net rumors, right? But then I thought others saying the same. Some swore nuclear weapons were buried beneath the vault. Others believed it was a storage site and were hidden in its chambers. I remember staring at the screen, my hands trembling. This wasn't just theory anymore, it was obsession. I could feel my father's old words echoing inside me. They didn't want us to see what's really there, and in that moment, the gold stopped mattering to me. What scared me now was the possibility that Fort Knox was never about gold at all. It was a fortress of secrets, a cage for truth so powerful that if that was true, then the biggest question wasn't what was inside Fort Knox. The real question was, why were they so desperate to keep us out? The moment I started connecting the dots, the world around me began to change. It was subtle at first. A block email here, a deleted forum thread there. A source I was supposed to meet in Kentucky never showed up. 2 days later, his account was wiped clean like he never existed. And then it got personal. One night, as I walked home, I noticed a black SUV parked across the street from my apartment. Engine running. Lights off. The same vehicle was there again the next night, and the next. I tried to tell myself it was coincidence, but deep down, I knew. I wasn't just researching anymore. I was trespassing, crossing invisible lines I wasn't meant to cross. My father used to say, the real truth isn't guarded by fences, it's guarded by fear. I never understood that until now. Every article I read, every late night call I made, every read I followed, I could feel eyes on me. Like Fort Knox itself was reaching out, warning me, daring me to stop. But I couldn't stop, not now, because once you get this close, there's no turning back. supplies are too heavy, and the silence is too loud, and maybe the real treasure of Fort Knox isn't what's inside, maybe it's the cost you pay just for asking. I never planned to end up here, I only wanted answers. But the deeper I went, the more I realized Fort Knox wasn't protecting gold, or even secrets. It was protecting power, the kind of power that doesn't just shape nations, it bends reality itself. And then, it happened. A letter slipped under my door at 3 a.m. No return address. Just one line, written in black ink, "Stop digging, or you'll find yourself inside the vault." I froze. My hands shook as I read it over and over. Whoever sent this knew me. They knew where I lived. They knew how close I was. That was the night I finally understood this wasn't just history, guys. This wasn't just theory. I was inside the story now. And maybe you think I should stop it. Maybe you think I should burn every note, delete every file, erase it all before it's too late. But here's the thing. Once you've seen the cracks in the walls, you can't unsee them. So if one day I disappear, if one day my voice goes silent, remember this. Fort Knox was never about gold. I thought I was the only one chasing this mystery. I thought I was alone. But then, late one night, my inbox flashed with a single new message. No name, no subject, just a corrupted audio file. When I pressed play, a voice cracked through the static. It was trembling, hurried. It's almost as if someone was speaking while looking over their shoulder. The words cut through me like a blade. Why? It's not what you think. It's worse. Don't trust anyone. Not even the ones guarding it. The distortion made me hear something new. Was that a gun cocking in the background? A door slamming shut? Or was it just my mind? I was filling in the gaps. The more I listened, the more I realized this wasn't just information. This was a warning. Whoever this person was, and they knew about Fort Knox from the inside. They had risked everything to get this out. But the part that haunted me wasn't what they said, it was what they didn't say. The pauses, the stutters, the unfinished sentences, as if they were choking on something far more dangerous than words. And then I noticed one final detail. At the very end of the file, almost inaudible beneath the static, was a whisper. My name. That's when I knew. I wasn't the one chasing the vault anymore. The vault was chasing me. I thought the audio file was the peak of it all until I opened the package on my doorstep. No return address, no stamps, just a thin envelope, sealed tight. As inside, there was only a single sheet of paper, a map, faded, torn at the edges, ink smeared as if someone had tried to burn it but stopped halfway. At first glance, it looked like nonsense. But the more I studied it, the more familiar it felt. The coordinates marked weren't random. They aligned perfectly with restricted zones near Fort Knox, places the public was never meant to see. My heart pounded. Was this real, guys? Or was someone playing a dangerous game with me? I kept staring at the map when something strange happened. The ink seemed to move. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I was tired, but no, it was shifting, lines twisting, markings fading and reappearing. Guys, then I noticed the map wasn't static, it was vanishing. The paper was coated with some chemical, erasing the details the longer it was exposed to air. Guys, I panicked. I grabbed my phone, snapping photos, but by the time I finished, half the map had already disappeared. Gone forever.
It was a
Guys,
test.
what remained though was enough. A single pathway, a mark shaped like an eye, and right there, in that moment, I realized, guys, someone wasn't just giving me clues, they were testing me. Whoever sent this map knew it would vanish. They wanted to see how fast I'd react. Guys, knife. It wasn't just a message, it was a challenge. And I had already taken the first step. Guys, I followed the trail left by the vanishing map. Hours of driving through empty roads, past towns that looked abandoned long before I was even born. My GPS cut out, my phone lost signal, yet something inside kept pushing me forward. Finally, I arrived. A chain link fence stood before me, guys, wrapped in barbed wire, warning signs screaming, "Key, restricted area. Trespassers will be prosecuted." I should have turned back. But the map's last marking, the eye symbol, was carved into the very post holding that sign, so I slipped through. Air inside felt heavier, charged, almost like static pressing against my skin. Every step echoed too loudly, like someone or something was listening. Then I saw it, a bunker door, half buried in the dirt, sealed with a rusted lock. The same eye symbol was scratched onto the metal, fresh and jagged, as if carved just days ago. I leaned closer, tracing it with my finger, and that's when a voice came from behind me. Then I saw it, a bunker door, half buried in the dirt, sealed with a rusted lock. The same eye symbol was scratched onto the metal, fresh and jagged, as if carved just days ago. Leaned closer, tracing it with my finger, and that's when a voice came from behind me. "It took you long enough. Thought I was talking to myself out here. I froze. My stomach dropped. Turning slowly, I caught the outline of a shadow standing just beyond me, all motionless, their face hidden in the dark. I opened my mouth to speak, but the figure raised a hand. In it, a small device blinked red, like a recorder, or maybe a detonator. "You weren't supposed to make it this far," the voice said.
What is
Low,
happening
distorted,
to me?
almost inhuman. My chest tightened. Questions swirled. Who were they?
We have to
How did they
find
know
a
me?
way to
And
escape
why?
this place.
Why did it feel like this was all staged?
Not if I find
Every
you
clue,
first.
every map, every whisper, just to bring me here. As the blinking light grew brighter, "This is where
thought
your
you could
story
hide from
really
us."
begins," they said. And before I could move, the light went out. You're still here. Then you felt it too. The silence when the light went out. The questions no one's daring to answer. But this was just one chapter. The story doesn't end here. It never does. So if you want to keep walking with me, hit subscribe, and not tomorrow, not later, now. Because the next story drops sooner than you think. And trust me, when it does, you'll want to be the first to see it.